a few minutes and okay. Is it that the site is not allowing students in? I'm saying that people are in the waiting room. Okay. In line with what I was trying to say earlier on. Okay, Alfred, you're back online, right? Oh, there's so many people waiting in the waiting room. How do I do this? Okay, Alfred, the reason why I came on slightly earlier, about 3 minutes to the actual takeoff time, is because, sometimes when you start too early, uh, rather when you start too late, you might lose this very time because it's allocated to so many other courses, so many other students having same lecture almost at the same time, different departments as well. So if you're not careful to start in good time, you might lose your time to somebody else that is available. Um, Also, I was hoping I was going to get 5 minutes additional time so that we'll be able to do a bit of revision of what we have been doing because I think your exams will be starting next week or next 2 weeks, I guess. So I was hoping I would use the 5 minutes to do a brief revision with you people. But then again, since we are all on the WhatsApp platform, we can always discuss further. So that being said, the whole idea of what we have been doing in this course is built around understanding the economics of various societies and the fact that there are theoretical and scholarly postulations that guides the various practices that countries have been known to have. And particular interest is the fact that when you understand the economics of these countries that are doing better, you have a fair knowledge of where you stand economically and what efforts should be put in place in the pursuit of development. There is no gainsaying that we are an underdeveloped society. And the whole idea of the study of this course is to expose us all to the knowledge of what has worked in other environments and to see that how that can be replicated in our own societies as well. And in line with that, we have seen various efforts, various explanations that have sought to give an understanding of what the whole idea of development is about, and then the steps that can be taken to attain development. So when you understand that, you now look inwardly and find out what you are not doing right, or what third world countries are not doing right, what underdeveloped societies are not doing right, and what they can do to attain development. So in our efforts to transform the lots of our society, to have at least a semblance of what is obtainable in these advanced countries, various efforts have been made, ranging from the issues of an improved administrative system built around the civil service. We have looked at how we have borrowed policies and programs of other countries and replicated same here, like in the era of the structural adjustment program. We also saw that when that was failing, there was the African Alternative Framework to Structural Adjustment Program that was implemented in the 80s to see how to transform the negativities that were embedded in the structural adjustment program that was implemented. We have also seen various development plans, pre-independence and post-independence. We have seen 10 years development plan, we have seen 5 years development plans. All these are various measures that have been put in place within Nigeria and in other third world countries as well to attain development. So various efforts have been made. Even the idea of getting grants and aids and all of that is geared towards the pursuit of development. So for the purpose of this course, we looked at how the Nigerian government, be it from the pre-independence to post-independence era, tried to use the instrumentality of the civil service, which is the machinery for the implementation of government policies and programs in the pursuit of development. And we saw the various reforms, the various commissions that existed within that period. Even up till date, we continue to experience various reforms. But our attention was drawn to the era of of the 80s, the post-independence period, and then the various development plans and how the civil service was used in the pursuit of attaining development. All that is in the bid to see how to transform the lots of our society, at least to be on the path of development. And after the civil service, we, in the last lecture, looked at the various development plans that were put in place, the high points of those plans, the areas where they failed, and the efforts that were made, particularly as it relates to the individual person, to the aspect of agriculture, to the pursuit of industrialization, health programs, and so many others that continued to show its presence in the various development plans. That's to tell you that there's a huge correlation between the individual welfare, the ability of the individual to be exposed to a comfortable material well-being, to the aspect of a vibrant agricultural system, to the pursuit of industrialization. All these put together are the indices that can be used to transform a society to a developed pattern, in as much as there's still much to be desired. So in our discussion for today, our emphasis will now be on why do we have development plans, and to also look at the development plans of some other countries and the high points that could be borrowed from them, to see how we can also continue to improve on the aspect of development that we have attained so far. So we said that national planning is usually prepared according to specific periods, but it can vary according to duration, ranging from 1 year to even 50 years, like we saw in the last class. I don't know, I think the lecture Alfred posted on the platform, and then you could see that some areas I colored in red, other areas I colored in blue. The whole idea is for you to understand better. The areas in red showed the emphasis that were laid in those various development plans. Because if you go by what is contained in the lecture notes, you would see a lot of structural arrangements, the internal arrangement that were put in place in the pursuit of the development plans, and that can be very confusing. So I deliberately did the coloration in that order, so you would see where the emphasis were laid in those plans, side by side, the criticisms that those plans faced, or the pitfalls of those plans that necessitated the coming up of other plans. So the fastest of those plans, first, was the one that we experienced post-independence. That was the first major indigenous plan in the pursuit of development, because the 1946-1950s development plan was considered as a foreign idea, an exogenous plan, and it did not work or did not suit the nature and character of our society, because Nigerians were not even carried along in the course of the development of those plans, the ideas embedded in those plans. Then the post-independence one of 1962-1968 was the first major national plan that was put in place. And across all that, to the period of the 1981-1985 plan, we saw a growth pattern that showcased a plan of 5 years period. Some slightly interrupted, particularly between 1967 and 1970, where we had the Civil War period. The plan of that era was slightly interrupted, and then the time frame adjusted further. So the whole idea here is that you could have plans that span across a year, and you could have plans as long as 50 to even 100 years. But so far, we have experienced so many plans built around these short frame ideas of 5 to 10 years plan in the pursuit of development. To a large extent, some yielded results. Others had a lot of challenges that needed improvements on. But in it all, we are still grappling with the issues of development, and we hope that as time goes on, we'll be able to find our footing in that aspect. We can have short-term plan, 1 or 2 years, medium-term plan, 5, 7, 8 years, and long-term or perspective plan, 10, 25, 50 years and above. Following the socialist revolution in Russia in 1917, private ownership of the means of production was abolished. With that went private enterprise and the free market mechanism as vehicles for economic development. Planning and public enterprise were instituted in its place. Let me pause here and explain that a bit. From the very beginning of this course, in fact, what triggered our interest in the study of this course is premised on the fact that there was global economic crisis in the 30s. Russia had its own fair share between 1917 and 0, and they were able to combat the economic crises that were faced at that time using the government or state planning machinery as a tool of development, and it yielded tremendous results. So when the world got into that global economic crisis, the countries of the Soviet Union were largely immune to the crisis, owing to the fact that they were able to have a society that is built on an egalitarian principle and a firm distributive welfare system that ensured that people got according to what they needed, and they contributed to a common cause according to their ability. So because they had that system that took care of the interest of the majority of the people, they were immune to that global crisis as at that time. Meanwhile, the capitalist countries that laid claim to having a free market system, a system built around demand and supply and all that, was neck deep into that crisis. And they now saw that, okay, there is this aspect of the world that is doing well on the premise of state planning arrangements. They quickly imbibed some of the culture of that system, and it worked for them as well. They were able to come out of the crisis of that time. So socialism gained very quick spread and understanding on this premise of the fact that they did not face the crisis as other countries did. So upon independence, so many countries of the third world, or those that were still under colonialism, saw that if they allowed for free market economy, their societies would be dominated by foreign interests. So they quickly subscribed to this idea of these centrally planned economies and used the state to implement policies and programs that were of public interest. So that is what this statement is trying to say, that following the socialist revolution, there was a collapse of private ownership of properties because they saw that that system promoted material resources amongst a few individuals, with the vast majority of persons not having the means of production and distribution and had to submit to exploitation. So many of these countries, looking at the model that existed and how they succeeded better, upon independence, they borrowed this idea of the centrally planned economy. That is how we got to the study of this course. So the results were remarkable. The state mobilized high rates of public savings and investment. Capital accumulation and national income grew at unprecedented rates. By the end of the Second World War, the Soviet Union emerged as the second big power in the world in about 4 decades. From a situation of underdevelopment and backwardness, the Soviet Union became a developed country. This was thus a very successful example of planned economic development for the countries developing later to learn and emulate. The strategy adopted by third world countries was greatly influenced by the Soviet experience. However, with the collapse of socialism, planned economy gave way for a free market system in the Soviet Union. Well, that is outside the scope of this study, but there is this policy that was borrowed in the 80s that sought the collapse of the Soviet Union. It is known as the policy of glasnost and perestroika. There were ideas that some Western societies using proxies to implement in the Russian economy that now brought back the idea of private ownership of properties. And when that became a system in Russia, it saw to the quick collapse of the Soviet Union, and then capitalism gained more dominance and more recognition, in as much as we still have countries in the world that continue to lay claim to having state control of the commanding heights of the economy. So these ideas that were injected into the Soviet Union system brought to its collapse. Like we all know the story of the Cold War and so many other things that happened that period. The Soviet Union disintegrated into so many countries, and that was how socialism, the strength of socialism, began to wane this part of the world. However, there are still scholars that lay claim to these ideas. You may have heard about the Great Depression in 1959, also called the World Economic Crisis. What happened was that the market system, especially in the industrial countries of the West, grounded to a halt. There was overproduction, stock of unsold goods piled up, factories were shut down, share markets collapsed, unemployment soared uncontrollably. All this meant a complete mismatch between production and market demand. It had been known that the free market system did not ensure smooth development of an economy based on private enterprise, but the Great Depression made it crystal clear for everyone to see. So because of the challenges that the Western countries experienced. So many countries upon independence, and even after those that were already independent at that time also saw how the Soviet Union managed their economies better within that period. They quickly subscribed to this idea of having a centrally planned arrangement, the pursuit of development. Incidentally, one should also note that the Soviet economy, being a planned economy, remained unaffected by the Great Depression. How was the crisis of the Great Depression handled? By state intervention. The states in the badly affected countries of the West intervened to push up market demand by undertaking public works and financing them by money creation, that is printing currency notes, also known as deficit finance. Let me pause here and then draw your attention to a quick comparison that further show that no country of the world is entirely tilted towards a particular economic pursuit. That countries of capitalist origin also borrowed ideas from these socialist or centrally planned economies. Like we know what capitalism is, allowing private ownership of properties, allowing private individuals or investors to come into various sectors of the economy. So in their own idea, there should be little involvement or no involvement at all of the state in deciding what happens within the economy. To them, every sector of the economy should submit to the forces of demand and supply, free market economy arrangements. They were practicing all that up until this global economic crisis. And they quickly borrowed the ideas of these socialist countries. The idea of printing currency, even injecting resources into various sectors, agriculture, industrialization, even buying these unsold goods, excess production, and giving to their citizens for free. Those are all elements of socialism. So you now see that no part of the world is entirely strictly adhering to a particular principle. A little to the left, a little to the right is what happens and how various economies pursue development, including these very highly placed capitalist countries. So this step generated additional income and employment. Market demands for goods and services gradually picked up as a result of state intervention policies. In the course of time, normalcy was restored and development resumed. This course of state intervention is also known as Keynesian solution of the economic crisis, named after the famous English economist J.M. Keynes, who had provided the economic theory on which this solution was based. So it was his idea that the state should intervene and see to the fact that areas where the economy is not doing well, the government should step in and resolve whatever crisis is in that arrangement. Like we know it in Nigeria, for instance, where we have companies that are not doing well, be it private companies or where the government has the majority shares, and it is found that those companies are not doing well. We have a body in Nigeria, I think AMCOM, that goes into that sector, takes over the operation of that sector to ensure that it does not lead to a total collapse, because a total collapse would have a negative effect in terms of economic balance. In the United States, this course of state intervention came to be known as the New Deal. The experience, sorry, I keep saying people in the waiting room, the experience of the Great Depression had, apart from other things, one very major effect. The faith in a laissez-faire state, a fence-sitting state not actively intervening in the economic life to control the functioning of the market, was shaken. So you see that because of how they quickly got the idea of allowing their state to equally intervene, because they saw that the private ownership of properties and then private ownership of means of production was failing. Other countries now also saw that if they could borrow these ideas from these centrally planned economies, then it is best for them to pursue development using the state as the hallmark or the total parameter in the pursuit of development. Since then, state intervention in the market system, wherever necessary, became a normal feature of the capitalist countries. So you see the point I was trying to make, that no country entirely lays claim to a particular economic model, but a combination of different models is what you find on the global stage. Secondly, as noted earlier, the state in these countries oversees the economy and engages in indicative planning, where the state does not actively play a role in economic development, but merely indicates the direction in which private enterprises could go. Finally, it plans for and undertakes public works, especially in the field of social infrastructure. Such developments in the developed capitalist countries following the Great Depression had a lesson for the developing countries. The lesson was economic development could not be left wholly to private enterprise based on the free market economy. The state had a role to play in it. Shortly after the experience of the Great Depression came the Second World War between 1939 and 1945. It necessitated not just state intervention in the capitalist and fascist countries like Germany and Japan, but an overall control of the economy, its regulation and production planning for meeting the war needs. So you can see from this statement that the states in these so-called capitalist countries quickly came in and intervened in various sectors of the economy to guide it from a total collapse. And in doing that, they submitted to some dictates of socialism. And then when the world faced the Second World War, they saw that that could not in any way be handled by private ownership of properties or the means of production and all that. The state had to take total control of meeting both the internal needs, that's the domestic needs of these various capitalist countries, side by side, trying to also bring peace to the world. So they saw that the role of the state cannot be overstated when one talks of the issues of development. That is why third world countries would continue to use the state and not entirely submit to the forces of demand and supply in the pursuit of development. Like we know it in Nigeria now, we have seen a lot of interference in the policies of government by this Western countries, IMF and World Bank. You hear a lot of emphasis on allowing the force of demand and supply to decide what happens to the economy. That is having an adverse effect on the currency. It's having an adverse effect even on the distribution of the material goods. You see that you now have the vast majority of persons struggling with different economic needs. Even at the moment we are having shortages, fuel supply and all that. So the state must always come to play and pursue policies that reflect a welfare system that guarantees that the individual does better. It's not enough to have an economy that continues to showcase an increased financial position, but that financial position must translate into an improved welfare system. If not, you can have an economy that prides itself as the largest economy in Africa, but are your citizens doing well? So all these are things that one should look at in terms of both the distribution of resources within the system. This is what is known as planning of the wartime economies. After the war, rehabilitation and reconstruction required the active role of the state. This historical experience favors centralized planning. Alongside the above arose the notion of welfare state, which finally came to be accepted in practice in all market economies after the war. I know the idea of the welfare state is one where the interests of the citizens are adequately taken care of, which ranges from good pay in workplaces, the issue of adequate infrastructural facilities, the issue of health system, the issue of employment, and so many other factors. So where this is lacking, it means the state is not positioned in the right approach to providing what is required to better the lives of the citizens. Apart from this interventionist role, the welfare state also has to correct the negative aspect of market-based development concerned with the wider issue of social welfare. The developing countries of the West, the developed countries of the West, the state makes a sizable expenditure on old age security, unemployment benefits, health, education, and such other social services. Let me pause here and then also cast your mind quickly to something we have discussed before now, especially when we were talking about the theories of development, with particular emphasis on the dependency theories. They said that first, whatever economic arrangement you want to put in place, there is always the need to look at how well the citizens are doing. And that is what this statement is trying to say. Now we are faced with a system that tells you about removal of subsidy. But when you juxtapose that with what happens in these advanced countries, you find that even the unemployed in those countries are paid stipends that carries them through. In this part of the world, and I'm telling you to cut down on education, cut down on your welfare system, cut down on so many other social activities that ordinarily should improve the living conditions of the people. So you can see the hypocrisy that exists in the ideas of these advanced capitalist countries. They make you submit to the free market forces of demand and supply and all that. Meanwhile, your citizens continue to wallow in abject poverty and pain. And it's a deliberate effort to keep these underdeveloped countries perpetually dependent on these advanced countries of the world. That is the argument of these third world scholars, these dependency scholars, that the activities of these Western countries is the result of why we are underdeveloped and why we are faced with the challenges that third world countries are faced with. So for any progress to be made in this direction, you must turn a new leaf. Now, where they say you will not spend in education, you should actually spend more on education. We have seen countries that have done the opposite of this, of the ideas of this IMF and World Bank, and they thrived very well. South Korea is a good example. So whatever economic arrangements you are trying to pursue, or whatever efforts you are making to get the loss of your citizenry on the path of development must reflect the welfare needs of this country. If not, you are bound to fail. All these are known as social security or welfare measures. Provisions for all this requires planning. A major negative effect of market-based development, which has emerged lately, is environmental pollution with ecological degradation. What it's saying is that, we talk about climate change, we talk about cutting down on carbon emission and all that. Meanwhile, these advanced countries of the world are the ones even more into this whole idea of carbon emission and then climate, whatever troubles the climate is faced with. Third world countries, what are they really producing? Or what are the industrial strength of these countries that one will now be talking of environmental pollution, telling you not to even look at some aspect of the development of your economies because you're going to be harming the ecology or your environment and all that. So you see that there is a conspiracy going on in these advanced countries of the world that continues to ensure that these third world countries do not even understand what to do in the pursuit of development. They tell you about green energy. Do we have the knowledge, the manpower, the requisite skill and experience to pursue that? So now you are caught in the web of not even following the path that can suit your internal development by submitting to what you do not understand. So it's a whole lot that we will continue to look at, continue to hope that we would find the best means to handle these situations. So the welfare state is required not only to protect the environment and the ecology, but also to conserve and plan for restoration and development of natural resources. A free market mechanism based on the accounting of private profit does not provide for this. This also is a historical experience favoring development planning. The field of development administration can also be said to have started in the developing countries after World War II. After this war, the colonies started agitating for independence, and many of them got it. However, most of the newly independent countries were poverty-stricken, but the masses had been led to expect that independence would bring about an immediate improvement in their condition. The non-realization of these expectations in turn bred a mood of impatience. Thus, improvement needed to be effected as speedily as possible, or the mood of impatience would explode into violent reactions which would engender, if not destroy, the state itself. So what this is simply saying is that upon independence, the hope for development was very high. But when that was not coming forth, they had to submit to using the state in the pursuit of development and an improved welfare system, which is what so many capitalist countries have done, even though they continue to lay claim to capitalism. The government of these countries quickly realized that the idea of gradual development, might not serve their purpose well. They were convinced that relevant administrative theories and procedures would have to be adopted to modernize their economies and accelerate development to be equivalent eventually to those of the West. because there was a chronic shortage of capital, money or wealth used to start a business, and capital markets where money for starting a business is sourced, such that private ownership would necessarily mean foreign ownership of the new nations wanting to preserve their independence closed their doors to foreign investors. It was therefore felt that government was the only agent organized enough to employ its machinery to induce, promote, and manage socio-economic development. The various newly independent countries got from seeing that the socialist countries did better within the period of the Great Depression, and the capitalist countries struggled a lot, and they also saw the contradiction in the capitalist system that gives wealth to a few individuals on the premise of private ownership of property. They were quick to decide that the state would be the best approach to be used in the pursuit of development. So these newly independent countries quickly submitted to the various states that gained independence in the pursuit of development because they did not want foreign investors to dominate the fortunes of their society. So it was therefore felt that government was the only agent organized enough to employ its machinery to induce, promote, and manage socio-economic development. Thus, in the post-independence period, government became the prime agent of economic development, providing infrastructure and producing goods and services, often provided through the mechanism of public enterprises. Like we know what public enterprises are. They are large government enterprises that provide services, goods and services in the interest of the majority of the people. Take, for instance, power, or even rail transportation, or even mineral resources that are being exploited in Nigeria, for instance. Some of these large corporations can only be owned by government because if allowed in the hands of private individuals, the masses will not be able to afford them. So using the state, government set up these various enterprises to provide services in the interest of the majority, which is an aspect of development planning. It is possible to describe such planning as an attempt to promote and coordinate through central planning institutions the social and economic activities of central and regional government with a view to achieving an accelerated national development. It is obvious that such planning presents problems in a federal setup whose principle includes the division of power among the levels of government. The existence of a written constitution showing the division and coordinate supremacy of the levels of government with regard to their respective functions. We shall examine the application of these for the planning process later. What this is simply saying is that within the structural arrangement of Nigeria, we have states, then we have the federal government. So we have a government that continues to pursue development using the state as well, and then within the confines of the federal government. That is why you can have states investing in some aspects of businesses or owning various enterprises as well. And then you have the government also spreading its levels of development across various aspects. So it's more of a synergy between the state government and then the central government pursuit of development. Remember that the whole idea we are discussing today is why we must plan in the pursuit of development. So we have looked at now borrowing the ideas from these socialist countries by using the state as a model in the pursuit of development. We have also looked at how various theories have presented themselves as ideas that can be used in the pursuit of development, and the ones we have settled for. We have seen how issues of development planning that have taken place across different aspects in the pursuit of the development within Nigeria, from independence to independence. We have seen also how the civil service was used and is still being used as a way to implement government policies in pursuit of development. So all these are the reasons why one must plan. And the whole idea of planning is to improve the standard of living in the society. So there are also types of planning, and they include, there are various aspects. First, we have operational planning, which is more like the day-to-day kind of arrangement that is put in place in pursuit of a functional system. We have the strategic planning, we have tactical planning, and all these have their various explanations. I'm trying to see how many minutes. Okay, 40 minutes. I think we have about 20 minutes more. Okay, I'll try to run through them quickly. The operational plans are about how things need to happen. Motivational leadership speaker Mark Story said at LinkedIn, guidelines of how to accomplish the missions are set. This type of planning typically describes the day-to-day running of the company. Strategic planning is fairly longer in terms of its scope and its time frame as compared to operational planning. Like we have seen under operational planning, it's more like an everyday activity that goes on in terms of how to guarantee stability of the system. Strategic planning focuses on particular sectors of the economy and has a longer lifespan. Strategic plans, strategic plans are all about why things need to happen. It is a big picture arrangement, long-term thinking. It starts at the highest level with defining a mission and casting a vision. Strategic planning includes a high-level overview of the entire business. It is the foundational basis of the organization and will dictate long-term decisions. The scope of strategic planning can be anywhere from the next 2 years to the next 10 years. Uh, Important components of strategic plan are vision, mission, and values. When you take your mind back to the last lecture that was posted on the WhatsApp, and then side by side what we have discussed so far, there are specific areas where the various national plans that we have had in Nigeria tried to improve on. And they saw or understood that when those areas are working, there's a tendency that better welfare system will be entrenched and development pursued more easily. And emphasis on those areas were on agriculture industrialization. In fact, almost all the plans showed a high level of budgetary allocation to this sector because we all know it that there is a complementarity and reciprocal arrangement that exists between a growth in agriculture to an industrial society. So agriculture feeds industrialization. So that being said, strategic plans in most cases target specific areas where improvements can be pursued. And upon that, development can become a factor or a feature of such a society. So beyond that also, there are tactical planning arrangements. And tactical plans are about what is going to happen. Basically, at the tactical level, there are many focused, specific, and short-term plans where the actual work is being done that supports the high-level strategic plans. Tactical planning supports strategic planning. It includes tactics that the organization plans to use to achieve what's outlined in the strategic plan. My use of organization here and as contained in the material does not necessarily mean the companies that we see around. It could be on a broader perspective of looking at how a country functions. So organization here, your mind should not be narrowed to just companies alone. It could also be how countries work. So tactical planning is different from operational planning in that tactical plans ask specific questions about what needs to happen to accomplish a strategic goal. Operational plans ask how the organization will generally do something to accomplish the company's mission. So all these are the various types of plans that we have in existence. Okay, there's also the contingency plan. Contingency plans are made when something unexpected happens or when something needs to be done. Like we know from the name contingency, you know that it's more like an emergency arrangement to maybe meet up an emergency situation. Business experts sometimes refer to these plans as a special type of planning. Contingency planning can be helpful in circumstances that call for a change. Although managers should anticipate changes when engaged in any of the primary types of planning, contingency planning is essential in moments when changes can't be foreseen. As the business world becomes more complicated, contingency planning becomes more important to engage in. We'll try to run it a bit faster. So the planning process in Nigeria, like we have been discussing before now, this also takes us back to the last lecture. The efforts of the government and then the combination of the various internal structural arrangements side by side the resources that were available at that time in the pursuit of development is what one can subsume into the planning process. Like we said earlier on, that when those plans were made, they needed some budgetary allocation, they needed data, they needed various offices ranging from positions of ministers, the joint planning committee, the special planning programs and all that. and then supervised mostly by ministers and particular ministries and departments in the pursuit of development. So the whole idea is how to harness the natural and human resources and the ideas that are embedded in government policies and programs of those periods to implement government policies and actions in the pursuit of development. So I am hoping that we would round up this lecture like 10, 20 minutes before time so that all of you can ask your questions and make your contributions. But I'm saying that we might need another session so that we would be able to catch up with what is required for your exams. So I would continue to run through them quickly because there are some other very, very important aspects that I would want to showcase before we round up. So the whole idea of the planning process in Nigeria is premised on how to get the requisite manpower, the resources, and how to implement government policies using specific ministries and status of government that are charged with development. Like we know it in Nigeria, we have the National Planning Commission, we have the Ministry of Finance, and in the state, at the state level, we have various ministries and government agencies that are charged with the development of specific sectors of the society. And that when those sectors are gotten right, the tendency that they can be used to transform the other aspect of society becomes very high. So there must be deliberate processes put in place, deliberate actions under strict supervision and evaluation that would guide how these policies or programs can be used to transform the society to a developed one. There's the angle of the rational planning framework, there's the various ideas embedded in them, ranging from the Operation Feed the Nation, the Green Revolution, all these were done within the confines of boosting better agriculture with the hope that agriculture would use the pursuit of industrialization, so many other activities. So the whole idea of having these bodies, these internal structural arrangements, has done and capitalized into ministries with heads and other bodies put in place the ideas that are embedded in the development plan is what makes the entire process of the pursuit of those plans to now improve the society and the welfare needs of the people. So there are so many plans that we have experienced in Nigeria, be it from agriculture to the civil service to infrastructural development and so many other things. But there was a period that the government paid so much money to civil servants under the Udoji Commission, and that saw an improved welfare arrangement within the system, even though it was short-lived and had its own challenges that brought inflation and so many other things that now saw to the abandonment of that idea. Even now, we have civil servants clamoring for improved welfare system in terms of improved salaries and all that. So all these are efforts and attempts by the government to ensure that the system is put in place in the pursuit of both individual and societal development. Because it's not enough for you to just have a system that continues to showcase high financial position on a holistic approach, but does not translate into an improved welfare system for the people. So the planning machinery in Nigeria, this is more like the bodies that are put in place to see to the implementation of government policies and programs in pursuit of development. And we have seen that there's the Joint Planning Board, there's the National Economic Council. This happened mostly in the 80s. However, even in recent times, we have various bodies that are charged with the implementation of government policies to see that all the entire society and the masses are carried along. And then the society also exhibits structures that would command the kind of development that is found in the advanced capitalist countries of the world or in other advanced countries of the world that the case may be. So there's the National Planning Office, there are ministries, there are commissions, there are various agencies that are put in place in the pursuit of development. Like we are seeing here now, Ministry of Planning, the Director of Research, the Central Ministry of Finance, the Head of Economic Development, then the Cabinet, and so many other bodies of governments that are charged with the pursuit of development. Okay, so what is the state in Nigeria today? Considering the various development plans, various efforts that we put in place in the pursuit of development, various both private sector development agenda, aspect of using public enterprises and government funds in the process of development, what is the state of affairs in Nigeria today? And we see that today, Nigeria may be described as a country still grappling with the issues of development. Unemployment, poverty, high crime rate, and so many other societal challenges continue to worsen. Also, there are no physical structures to show for the trillions of naira budgets announced every year over the decades. Sadly, too, Nigeria is not only highly indebted, but also has a very high propensity for accumulating local and foreign debts. The purpose of this article, therefore, is to explain why Nigeria's planning over the years has been fruitless. More importantly, the article is also written to explain how the missing growth in competence building growth. So what this statement is trying to say is that in spite of all the effort that's been put in place long before now, that Nigeria continues to have issues bordering around development. That beyond the fact that we are nowhere when one compares with the advanced countries of the world in terms of physical infrastructure, we are also far from being comfortable when one now looks at the life of the individual within the Nigerian society. So it therefore goes to show that we have had so many plans, so many efforts have been put in place long before now, but they have not yielded the desired result in terms of societal transformation when one compares with the advanced countries of the world. So what do we do now in terms of getting development? Like we have said before now, planning is required, and this planning must target critical sectors of the economy for super development. I still have a lot of slides, and we're almost out of time. So what has been the development theory guiding Nigeria's planning? Okay, so this is also another important aspect, but the aspect I was hoping we'll talk about. The Okigbo Commission of 1989 analyzed the Nigerian planning process of 1900 to 1992 and noted that the theory that guided the Nigerian First National Plan was the Harold Dumas model, the HDM. This is a model that one can say falls within the angle or the argument of this modernization school of thought that continues to say that the challenges of development are found within the economies of these third world countries, that they continue to float a system that is contradictory to the processes of development, that they neglect the various ideas of that these capitalist countries have used to attain development. So many other things need to be done in that time. So the HDM model remains Nigeria planning theory. This model states that the growth in income achievable by the nation over a period is dependent on the rate of savings and the capital investment that can be found in the system. Remember, the argument of these American scholars is that we have a culture that negates the tenets of development that these countries of the West have. For instance, we have a poor culture of saving, a poor culture of investment. But then again, the use of this of the developed scholars is that it's upon convenience that an individual will be able to say, if you are not able to meet the requirements for your material well-being, there's not much one can do in terms of savings and investment. So this model is simply saying that emphasis should be more on savings and investment as a tool for societal transformation and the pursuit of development. So the HDM assumes that labor is not needed in the production process, or that there is only one input in the production process, and that is capital. Glad 1977 with HDM as a planning theory, there is only one planning variable, capital. In a society where capital is considered as the most important factor of production, planning is synonymous with efforts aimed at making capital available for spending. The HDM rosters stages of development, like I mentioned earlier on one of the lectures, that roster describes 5 stages of development that must be followed to attain development. And the first is traditional society must get to the point of the takeoff stage, the drive to maturity, the traditional society, the precondition to take off, the takeoff stage, the drive to maturity, and the stage of mass consumption. So in his own ideas, you must follow this step by step to attain development. So the HDM rosters theory of development, there's also the growth theory of development, and some others that continue to feel that the economies of third world countries harbor indices or factors that are inimical to development, all fall under the modernization school of thought. And in their own perspective, these third world countries are the result of the challenges that they continue to grapple with. And that for any meaningful progress to be made, they must now model their society along the lines of what is obtainable in Western Europe and other advanced countries of the world. So Nigeria continues to toe that line. That is why we continue to see issues of removal of subsidy, increased tariff, whatever, all in the pursuit of development. So all these are Western models or modernization school of thought ideas that we continue to pursue in this part of the world. So national development plan of some selected countries, the whole idea of bringing this in is for us to see what other countries have used in the pursuit of development and how those ideas can be borrowed and replicated in this part of the world to attain a considerable level of development. An example is what happened in India using agriculture as a model of development and how that was able to also bring about the growth of industrialization and other kinds of sectoral complementarity and reciprocity. We also looked at Ghana as a model, particularly not too long ago, how they were able to put in measures that saw an improved healthcare system and saw a distribution of resources from the very rich to the pursuit of happiness for the more less privileged people in society. So all these are ideas that other countries have showcased in the pursuit of development. So in line with that, the ideas of the UK, in the last class also, we saw how the British civil service system is what we have tried to replicate in Nigeria here. In as much as there's so much to still be desired within the confines of our civil service, the UK model is a model that we can still borrow from the pursuit of development. In other texts also, outside the scope of this work, the South Korea model is also another one that we prescribe for students of politics and development to understand that various approaches can be taken to transform society. Like we have seen that these Western countries continue to show a model of development that most times when you approach them, you are quick to now have a crisis of welfare needs within the system, that you can actually borrow those ideas and then tweak them a bit to now conform to the nature and character of your society. That is what South Korea did, and that is how they have become a model of development in the world. Where they say cut down on education, South Korea actually spent more on education. Where they say cut down on agriculture, they spent more on agriculture. Where they say cut down on industrialization, they spent more on industrialization. And that, to a large extent, transformed the societal outlook of this country. And that has also become a model that can be pursued. So you can read through these various countries that we have as models within this course: India, Ghana, UK, and also add your own ideas to it, read other texts, then understand the various efforts that are taking place in the pursuit of development. So in summary, the unit discussed the National Development Plan of some selected countries. The planning process in India is usually organized by the states using these agencies. The state is particularly assisted in plan formulation by the Planning Commission, and when the plan is approved by the Parliament, it becomes a National Development Plan ready for implementation. The implementation is usually appraised at least 2 times before the plan ends. So any idea that can be put to work in the pursuit of development is worthy of emulation, especially if it has proven to have worked in other societies. We must try our best to also imbibe those culture, those practices that have worked elsewhere and try to replicate them, but most importantly, putting into consideration the nature and character of our society. Because any development idea that does not improve the welfare system of the individual is highly critical and is bound to fail. So emphasis must always be placed on the living condition of people and the distribution of the material well-being that is required to have a just and welfare system that the individual is the hallmark of the pursuit of development. So having said that, I'll be opening the floor for everybody to make contributions or ask questions, and let's see if we can do all that before we round up for the day. So anybody with any question or any contribution? Also, remember that the WhatsApp platform is there for you to ask your questions and make your contributions. We don't have any time left, but however, let me hang on for a while and see. The WhatsApp platform is there. Read the course material entirely. make reference to past questions. Then you can share your ideas or ask your questions on the platform as well, so that it's possible for everybody to be carried along. And if you want, you can still have another session and then run through everything we have discussed from the first class to this very last class, so you prepare yourselves for your exams. So any question, any contribution, anything to be said? So this is the time for that. Abiodun, Kehinde, Alfred, so many of you are online. Anybody with anything to say? Okay, or are we all clear with the discussion so far? Okay, I'll give you the time to think, read through, and then rebut on the WhatsApp platform.
Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Folashade.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please, I don't have question. It's just a maybe a suggestion. Can you still share your slide with us so
Yes,
that we can read it?
yes.
Because I noticed most of the thing you're saying is not inside our course material.
Are you serious? Okay. Okay.
Like the strategic planning you were talking about, I was searching through my course material. I didn't see anything of there.
Oh, okay. That's under the types of planning. Okay. Alfred will get the slides across to you.
I saw a lot under the types of planning, like development. All right, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So what else? Okay, so we'll stop here for now, and then I will be on the platform to attend to any question, any area you want us to revisit. Okay.
Are we still having a class next week, Monday, sir?
This is supposed to be the last, but if you people want us to have another session, fine, I'll be available to do that.
We'll be happy, sir. Please, let's have it next week. Since we are starting exam next week, Wednesday. So we are still going to go on Monday, sir.
Okay. We'll see to that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right.
Hello, sir.
Yes, perfect.
We appreciate another class. Maybe we'll just have a kind of Q&A session.
Okay.
Where we'll raise issues and then you guide us through how best we can approach your questions.
Okay, that's fine. All right.
Yes, sir. It's okay.
Still, you can always ask your questions on the WhatsApp platform. I think the WhatsApp has a wider coverage. I think at the moment we have only 8 persons online. So the WhatsApp has more persons. So we can discuss on the WhatsApp platform and then we can still have another class. It's fine with me.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Enjoy the rest of the day.
And you too, sir. Bye.